Keir Starmer, the British head of state, just declared the UK will recognise Palestine unless Israel takes substantial steps. What are the steps the UK demands Israel take to stop recognition? 4 points. I'll list them for you. Number 1, take substantive steps. Made it. To end the humanitarian crisis in Gaza in terms of food access into the Strip. Number 2, permit the United Nations to resume unhindered humanitarian aid deliveries themselves. Number 3, commit to and publicly affirm that there will be no annexation of the West Bank, no expansion of West Bank settlements under official Israeli annexation. And number 4, Israel must recommit to a viable peace process that aims for a two-state solution end goal. Now, Israel's having none of that, right? But let's get into it. The diplomatic landscape just shifted dramatically. It's shifted so far, I've shifted into a different continent in terms of my accent, as you can see, right? Both now, France and the UK have announced that they will recognize a Palestinian state by September 2025, when the UN General Assembly convenes. Fundamentally, this alters the global balance of power around the... there's always a problem when I start doing videos. I'm burping or throwing up. My son was throwing up. That's why I had to change shirts. No further comments. This fundamentally shifts the global balance of power in the Israel-Palestine conflict. French President Emmanuel Macron, I won't try to say it with a French accent because I'll just stumble and it will lead to more faffing about. He dropped the bombshell first last Thursday, announcing France would formally recognize Palestinian statehood at the United Nations General Assembly in September. So he might as well have announced it now. It's basically a pinky promise by the French state, publicly stated. It basically shows clear intent. And now, within just a few days after that, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer followed suit, but with a crucial condition, as mentioned before. The condition, though, I predict, remains largely symbolic. It's a way to appease the pro-Israeli side here in the UK, which is quite strong. It's not APAC level in the US, but it's quite strong here as well. To basically say the recognition of the Palestinian state is not unconditional, right, like France did. It's to say Israel has a way of stopping unilateral recognition by the UK of a Palestinian state. Now, this coordinated move makes France and... not Germany, I wish. It makes France and the UK the first G7 nations to take these steps, breaking ranks with traditional Western allies. And where there's a trickle, ladies and gentlemen, there's potential for a flood. These two recognizing Palestine is such a fat shift in the pro-Palestine direction, pro-two-state solution camp. It's unlike any progress ever made in the history of this conflict, right? Since the Israeli state sort of mushroom popped out of nowhere about 70 years ago. I remind you, Britain are the ones that gave away the mandate of Palestine to Israel. And how did Britain get this parcel of land? Well, they took it from the collapsing Ottoman Empire after the First World War as part of the total surrender, a negotiated, essentially unconditional surrender of the Ottoman state. Britain took the land, France took other land, then the Turks basically had their own internal war, and Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, heavy secularist, but he did for the Turkish people something very interesting, which is he didn't allow Turkey to be, completely taken up by the French and the Greeks on one side, left with the Anatolian heartland. He expanded it further and said, no, this is going to be Turkey, and Turkey turned out to be a much bigger country than it would have if Ataturk did not rally the people behind him. Anyway, sorry, that's completely irrelevant, especially for a 10-minute TikTok post where we're already stretching it. Anyway, let's go back to this topic, and I promise I'll finish on this point. I'm joking, that's a Sami Hamdi thing, but I feel I kind of go off on tangents as well. I'm still doing it. Britain took the land back in 1947, I think, even before, and gave it essentially to the Zionists, and that led to the unilateral establishment of Israel as a state over 70 years ago. For them to recognize a state now, for Britain to recognize a state now of the natives, is the biggest L Israel has so far accepted on the diplomatic stage. In its entire history, one could argue. With over 60,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza, according to the health ministry figures, likely over 100,000 according to some studies, even in the Western world. Some university studies say over 100,000 have probably lost their lives if you include casualties from all places, not just those clear-cut who have been slaughtered by an airstrike. Once you include missing persons, for example, and after those 100k, 60 to 100k, potentially more, international alarm continues to grow over the starvation conditions. 2025, people are starving, not because there's a drought or something, wrath of God calamity. No. There's food at the border not being allowed in, and that's why people are starving to death. Welcome to 2025. Yeah, humanity is absolutely advanced beyond, pure barbarism. European patience with Israel's military campaign has reached a breaking point. The humanitarian crisis has become politically unsustainable for Western leaders facing domestic pressure. They just can't hack. They just can't keep their population in line and keep agreeing with, blind support to Israel. They can't manage it. The population of these democratic states, largely democratic, you could call them, populations who tend to have a louder, more public voice than populations in less democratic states, for better or worse. I'm not giving democracy a clean pass and saying it's the best thing since sliced bread. Sliced bread is way better. I'm just saying analytically, though, democratic countries have populations that are louder, right? Excuse me. Just giving the facts. These loud voices continue to grow louder. And so geopolitically, there's a point where supporting Israel is no longer worth it for these Western powers. There's a crossing point after which it's actually a net loss for the administration to keep supporting Israel. For Spain, for Sweden, for Ireland, obviously Ireland, the original gangsters. And for now, the UK and France. Public discontent and outrage seems to have crossed that threshold, that crossing point, making blind support for Israel now hard for the government to continue justifying any longer. Israel's response has been swift and furious. Who cares though? But let's just go through anyway. Prime Minister Netanyahu accused both leaders of, quote, rewarding Palestinian resistance terrorism, H group terrorism, right? I'm not going to say the word because, it's like Voldemort's name. If you say it, he might show up because he put a curse on the name. In this case, TikTok algorithm has put a curse on that name. Even I said terrorism, it's just like, this video, I don't know how far it's going to go. You're going to have to help me push this video further. We're literally fighting the algorithm right now, right? If this phone is on your dashboard and on your car and you're listening to it, yes, I know some of you. You're naughty, you're teasing me. And I know some of you are, using this as a filler for your commute. No problem. Get wised up before you start making that green stuff, innit? Money, sorry. Please, drop the comments, but not while driving. No, but drop the comments otherwise. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me, your interesting questions or words of support. It's very motivating and it helps me push my content forward to other people. I want more people to understand the news and the analysis without the Western spin on it. People want the news, but they don't want the spin. That's why you come here. Now, Israel, we're talking about how they're responding. They suggested recognition of a Palestinian state would create, quote, an Iranian proxy state. Okay, fine. The United States, under Trump's administration, has also strongly rejected both moves from France and the UK, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling France's decision, quote, reckless. It's not reckless, by the way, for the US to supply the bombs, supply the jets, supply the intel, supply the technology to the Israeli state, and then give them diplomatic cover to carry out a genocide. That's fine. But it's reckless if you recognize a Palestinian state, a state for the natives. Absolutely, completely coherent. To be honest, not particularly surprising. Sorry to my American followers, but your country is literally built upon the bones and the stolen land of the Native Americans. So I'm not entirely surprised that your government is taking the side it is. Okay, anyway. Also APAC. All of what's going on right now, points to a shift in the world order that we're going through, from unipolarity under American hegemony to multipolarity, where there's multiple big players, and the Western narrative, the Western grand narrative, i.e. the facts and the interpretation sort of spun in the way the West wants, that narrative is no longer the only acceptable international narrative. Western Europe is asserting its independence from American foreign policy in relations to the Middle East. They're sort of breaking away. Europe is no longer attached via some sort of weird umbilical cord to the US, for better or worse. I'm just giving you the analysis. Currently, over 75% of countries globally recognize Palestine. If France and Britain follow through, that percentage increases, and both these countries were bastions of blind Israeli support. So Israel is losing allies so fast. It's only got two left, Germany and the US. Time will tell how things turn out. And I've run out of time again.